I'm Mark Golub, and in the news is JBS. For as of Tuesday, August 7th, 2018, JBS is now on Spectrum Television, channel 219 throughout New York City and throughout LA, and on different channels in a number of other major Jewish communities, including Orlando and Tampa in southern Florida, Cleveland, St. Louis, Dallas, and Fort Worth. Viewers in those cities with Spectrum's silver or gold package can now be part of the JBS family, and I am just thrilled to be able to welcome all of you who are now watching on Spectrum. And here to join me in this JBS celebration and to offer his unique perspective on some of the critical issues challenging Jewish life today is a man who is always at my side, Thane Rosenbaum, a distinguished fellow at NYU Law School, the founder and director of the Forum on Law, Culture, and Society, and a fabulous award-winning writer and novelist whose works include Secondhand Smoke, and The Golems of Gotham, and The Myth of Moral Justice, and How Sweet It Is about growing up Jewish in Miami Beach in 1972. It is wonderful, as always, to have you at our side. And isn't this wonderful? For the first time, those people who subscribe and are customers of Spectrum in New York, LA, and various other cities are able to see you on JBS.
Well, first of all, welcome everybody, especially the new Spectrum audience. I know that for many, many years, Mark has been contacted by Spectrum customers, cable customers, who've been wanting JBS. And so we're happy to be in your homes, finally.
Yes.
Tell your friends. This is the only station in town. No one else does this. Mark Golub had a vision, and it's a vision that is now fully realized now that virtually all the major cable stations are carrying JBS TV. What you're going to see on this network is unlike anything else. Honest reporting about the Jewish world, original coverage of the Jewish world, and when it comes to hot-button issues, specifically with Israel, you know, I've been on CNN and I've been on MSNBC and CNBC, and you know, this is just this is a fair, objective report. This is not a network that's going to be demonizing Israel because it's fashionable to do so.
Yes. And you've been an enormous contributor, and I mean it. Those of you who have been watching JBS know that anytime we do anything of significance, Thane is always with us, and it's because you bring a fabulous array of perspective and insight. So it's always wonderful to have you, and I would not begin our journey with the Spectrum audience without you sitting at my side. So thank you very much.
It's an honor to be here with you always.
Thank you. So I want to begin, you know, here we are. It's the beginning of the end of the summer. It seems like the holidays, which come the first, September 9th, are almost a stone's throw away. But as you look at the summer we've just had, what stands out for you in terms of Jewish significance, Thane?
Well, can we go back for a summer?
Please, absolutely.
I think it's important to remember that we've just reached a one-year anniversary of an extraordinary day in American Jewish history, Charlottesville of last year. And that's something we should not forget, where the marchers in Charlottesville were chanting, "Jews will not replace us." A year has now gone on since then, and you and I have discussed these issues before. Here's an area we don't necessarily agree in lockstep on.
Correct.
About its significance.
Correct.
But still, the fact that that's what was being said and that the world was watching at a time when there is such incredible increases in global anti-Semitism, especially in Europe, where to live in France, especially if you're a Holocaust survivor, makes you a target.
Absolutely.
To be in the United States during a time period in which you're seeing, you know, a revival of something, at least the normalization of old school anti-Semitism, is frightening.
Okay,
so
I want to press you a little bit on this, because as you said, we're not in lockstep here, and there's so much we see identically. That was a year ago.
Yeah.
In the succeeding 12 months,
Yeah.
give me an example of anything like it.
Well, it depends on how one compares it. There are a number of journalists, myself included, who have received, Jewish journalists, who have received hate mail. Some, this has not happened to me, but it could, have been pictured in concentration camp uniforms with death threats associated with that.
When's the last time that happened for you?
For me, just a number of months ago, but for people like Brett Stevens, just last week.
You think so?
Oh, yes. He just reported last week, it was the subject of a column, that he actually reported the death threat that he received. So, look, that's different.
Very different. It's not Charlottesville.
Yeah, it's different, but it's not unclear to me that the people that are screaming CNN sucks or CNN, is fake news, that they don't also harbor similar, anti-Semitic, neo-Nazi thinking. Now,
but why? What have they done or said? By the way, many people have disdain now for much of the mainstream media.
Yeah. Hey, and the mainstream media deserves some of it, and I'm happy to. Yes. I can give you examples for why.
Exactly.
And I can give you examples of reasons, even in Europe, where where you can see where the resentment is and the lack of faith in the press as an institution comes from. And so I'm not here as a journalist protecting.
I've just said I have not seen one anti-Semitic expression among people who are livid at the way the mainstream media has given up journalism for basically partisan reporting.
Right. Well, look. There's no way for us to, unless they do polling, to have a cross section of are the people who say CNN sucks are also the same people that harbor anti-Semitic beliefs. We don't have that information. God, I hope the Pew survey actually investigates that, because we're going to be on JBS for the next however long, and this is going to come up again.
Okay.
And so we would be able to point to that day. Remember when I said there was no polling, Mark? There's polling. But let's say now we are a year later. What I will say, and again, we're not outside the scope of Charlottesville, I will say this, and this you may not disagree with, I think, which is that the era of Trump has created such challenges for the Jewish community. Because on the one hand, he's done extraordinary things for the Jewish, well, I mean, the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital.
Do you support that?
Oh, of course.
Of course.
I mean, who couldn't?
By the way, many rabbis don't.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure,
No, think for a moment.
Yeah.
Thane Rosenbaum, why is it that there are American rabbis who are not celebrating the movie? Because Trump is the one who did it.
It's also something else. It's so complicated. It'll go so beyond the scope of what we can talk about. But I've talked about this before on your program. It has a lot to do with Tikkun Olam also. That there are rabbis that believe it's their job to impart not Jewish values or not Jewish learning for sure, or Torah. And as you know, I'm not a religious Jew, so I'm not speaking as a religious Jew. But who believe that social activism is what it means to be a Jew. And social activism means the love of the other and the criticism of the self. And that has been such a profound connection that you're seeing in synagogues in the United States, where there is this imparting of this is what it means to be a Jew. By the way, it strikes me as an easy way to be a Jew. It's a lot harder to recognize the mitzvot and to perform the actual rituals of being Jewish and sending your kids to Jewish day school, which I didn't. But I'm saying I'm speaking as someone.
You're not deprecating the notion of social justice.
No, I'm just saying that when you do that.
This has been most of your life.
Yes.
You fought for social justice.
I was a literary editor for Tikkun magazine for 6 years. So
what you're saying is that the balance has swung out of kilter.
Yeah, it has become the self-critical Jew who is interested in doing good for the other and not being the source of pain for the other. And to show, look at me, I'm Jewish, and I'm criticizing my own people. Look at my virtue. Look at, it's a kind of moral narcissism, which I've said. So I think some of it is related to that, and I am convinced of it. I speak at synagogues around the country, and it's amazing how often you can almost tell when the rabbi invokes the words Tikkun Olam in the introduction, you know, Israel is being criticized in that shul. You know, Israel's not getting a fair shake, because to think in terms of healing the world, curing the world, must be that the Palestinian pain overrides Jewish sovereignty to some degree. So I don't know. Yes, there are Jews who so shockingly think, or rabbis, that the acknowledgement, the recognition of Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Israel, legally, officially, and diplomatically, was a mistake. But that clearly was something that Trump deserves an enormous amount of credit for. What's happened in the United Nations, I'm speaking as a longtime law professor, is transformative. It's game-changing. We've never spoken honestly to the world and said there's an incredible amount of hypocrisy, there is just an incredible amount of demonization, and this is something that the United States should not be supporting. Withdrawing from the UNESCO resolutions that deny Israel's historic connection to Jerusalem, or Jews' historic connection to Jerusalem.
To all of Eretz Yisrael.
All of Eretz Yisrael. Withdrawing from the Human Rights Council, you know, pulling away, and standing up, saying, we're taking names. If you're spending your time demonizing Israel and passing resolutions against Israel and not Syria, something's wrong. If you're focusing on a human rights respecting country that is a liberal democracy that respects freedom of thought, and you're not after countries that are authoritarian, oppressive, and theocratic, something's wrong. And to Ambassador Haley's credit, great credit, this is a new language that the United States is speaking, and it's a Trump language. It says we're not standing on ceremony. By the way, we're not happy about the parking tickets you're picking up here. We're subsidizing too much of this. And we're going to speak straight and plain to you. Speaking straight and plain to the Palestinians has been an enormous boost, no matter what people in the foreign policy establishment believe. I can speak from my own experience. It's been an enormous benefit to the Palestinians. They need to hear the truth. And under President Obama, they were not being told the truth. The truth is Israel's not going anywhere, and you have to get used to it. And by the way, that's one of the reasons that I was so in favor of the recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's official capital, because when Trump said it takes it off the table, I mean, he didn't understand, I think, how complex it was, but he was right, which is to say, this is not even an issue. We're not going to let you pretend that Israel is going somewhere. In fact, that's their capital. The best you can hope for is to share their capital. But you're going to have to do some work. We're not chasing you, right? In the Obama administration, it was all about the poor Palestinians and the Israelis who were settlers, right? And the way in which Israel, the burden was always on Israel. And this is a very different talk. The passage of the Taylor Force Act, the withholding of...
Mention what it is.
The Taylor Force Act is a bill, and I wrote about this early for the Washington Post, early in its genesis, which is essentially makes absolute sense that we have learned that Palestinians who kill Israelis and are sentenced to prison or killed by an Israelis, their families, and they receive very generous salaries, stipends, tuition benefits, and insurance. And this goes to them and to their family. And $400 million a year was being doled out. Roughly 9% of the Palestinian Authority budget was being paid out to terrorists to compensate them for killing Jews. By the way, the Nazis didn't do this. I mean, this is how extraordinary. This is putting a target, putting a bounty on the head of Israelis and Jews. Ironically, tragically, Taylor Force wasn't Jewish. He was an American MBA student from, I think, Vanderbilt.
A veteran.
Veteran of both Iraq and Afghanistan. He was getting his MBA, and he and his buddies took a trip to Israel. He wasn't Jewish. And he was killed outside the old city. And his parents were like, what? Because they learned that the very next day that his killer was being celebrated by the Palestinian Authority as a martyr. And they also learned that his family was going to be receiving generous death benefits that was being paid for by American taxpayers. And so the Taylor Force Act says, unless you can show us that any of these monies are being traceable to funds that are being given to terrorists as a reward for compensating them for killing Jews, you're not getting that money.
Unless you can show us that it's going elsewhere.
Elsewhere, dollar for dollar. If the money is going elsewhere, and money is fungible, which is a problem, right? Because you put it in this account and use the money in a different way. But at this point, the United States has withheld 2/3 of the money. A little, not quite 2/3, but this year's withheld so far 2/3. They've even withheld $65 million to UNRWA, right? This is all extraordinary. None of this could have ever happened in the Obama administration. So from this perspective, this tough talk to the Palestinians, this attempt to say, look, Israel's not going anywhere. This is an actual geopolitical reality, and it's time, instead of saying, what we're really interested in is Israel, we want them out of the neighborhood, to say, look, a two-state solution means that you have to accept them as being present. It's time to recognize their right to exist. And we're starting to see other countries. The Saudi Arabian Crown Prince this year stunningly said, Israel has a right to live in peace within its own borders. This never happened. And so we're seeing a transformation in the way even the Middle East talks about Palestinians. And so a lot of the momentum that the Palestinians had in the Obama administration has frankly come to a halt. And by the way, the Mueller investigation, to my mind, has something to do with this in an offhanded way.
How?
Well, because the media's obsession with Trump has meant that if you watch CNN or MSNBC, not JBS, by the way, but if you're watching other cable news networks, all they want is Trump and the Mueller investigation 24/7.
Yes.
You get nothing else. You're not covering the world. You're not hearing anything. You're just hearing about Trump. Well, every Friday, whenever there's the March of Return protests, and one Palestinian is killed who is sort of standing beside a terrorist who's actually firing a machine gun, in the Obama administration, that would have been a war crime against the Israelis. And every Friday since March, this would have been endless condemnation against Israel for killing a Palestinian who was purportedly protesting. I don't really know, or peacefully protesting. I don't know of any peaceful protests that include turning kites into bombs, or turning balloons into arson balloons, or turning tires into arson tires, or firing machine guns or Molotov cocktails. So that story doesn't really exist, really. No one's paying much attention. There's a story in Reuters on the end of the day on Friday. But without the Mueller investigation, you would have seen this. So that's I'm sure this is not something Trump is happy about, but the focus has been shifted dramatically away from the kind of sympathy that we saw for the Palestinians in the Trump administration. Now,
and by the way, I should make sure everybody understands, you did not support the candidacy of Donald Trump.
No.
In fact, you worked for Hillary Clinton.
No, I actually started out working for Jeb Bush and then for Hillary Clinton.
Okay. So it's not that you come here as a Trump supporter from day one. But you are able to say that whatever the faults of the president, and there are faults, it does not negate the good he's done, especially for the state of Israel.
And I think he deserves more credit for that among Jews. But Jews, this is where the dark side of this is. A large segment of American Jewry has such feelings of hostility and revulsion to Donald Trump that people have fights during Shabbat meals. I'm sure the JBS community knows, that's on Spectrum TV now, knows, you can't mention this at a Shabbat meal because people go nuts. There is a divisiveness that's here, a corrosive divisiveness.
By the way, what about you? Have you ever been in a situation and you've expressed what you've expressed, and how do people react to you?
Yeah, especially on the Upper West Side. If you're not in an Orthodox Jewish home, it's to compliment anything that Trump does. To say anything is a sense of true heresy, tyranny. But that's the dark side of this, because I do think that what we're seeing in the Democratic Party is changing something, and Trump is responsible for this, which is you're seeing the progressive part of the Trump Party, which did not win.
Democratic Party.
The Democratic Party. I'm sorry, the Democratic Party. What we, for lack of a better term, the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party has shown a strength and new muscular presence that it was not able to demonstrate during the 2016 campaign, and it's growing stronger. The blue wave that they're claiming will happen in the midterm election is in large part driven by the hope that there are going to be more left-wing progressive Democrats.
And how do you feel about that?
For Israel, that's a terrible thing, a horrible thing. And so that's the dark side of Trump's successes. Even if you're neutral, which no one is, even if you're neutral on everything else about Trump, right? You don't care about the Mueller investigation. You don't care about his boorishness or coarseness or the tweeting, right? You don't want to hear about that. And by the way, there are a lot of Americans, red state Americans, who don't want to hear about that. They just love him and they don't want to hear about this other stuff. But even if you're neutral, if you're agnostic, so to speak, about him, you can't deny the fact that because of all of the focus on him, in good and bad, it has invigorated, reinvigorated, something that we haven't seen in American politics in many, many decades. I can't remember the last time. Eugene McCarthy? When was the last time? In the 1960s? Where a truly left-wing portion of the Democratic Party is becoming ascendant. People forget that when Barack Obama first was elected in 2008, he was a profound disappointment to progressives. They were so happy supporting him. One of ours, a student of Saul Alinsky, right? A guy who's a community organizer from Chicago, right? They were sure that he would come to the White House with a progressive agenda. And they were shocked at how centrist he was. He looked like Bill Clinton. He acted like Bill Clinton. They didn't say it publicly because they didn't know what to say. He was the first African-American president. They didn't want to criticize him. But the left was profoundly disappointed. And they knew it. And his position was, what do you want me to do? You know, I'm here, but I don't think I can bring out what you want. I can't pass that kind of legislation. Obamacare was the only real signature piece of progressive legislation. And there, too, it didn't provide a single payer, right? So it didn't even get the piece that the left really wanted. Now you see Elizabeth Warren. You see Bernie Sanders. In New York, for those of you who've been following this congressional election with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who just recently, when she was interviewed, when she was asked about could you weigh in on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, she invoked the very thing I just said to your JBS viewers that no one's paying attention to, which is what every Friday's protests along the Gaza border when Palestinians are killed. And she used the word massacre. By the way, Bernie Sanders never used the word massacre. Bernie Sanders used the words disproportionate death, which is the simpler way, the gentler way to describe what those people think of Israel's capacity to defend itself. But she referred to it as a massacre, and the Black Lives Matter movement agrees with this. The intersectional movement on college campuses believes this. This is part of the progressive agenda, and if the Trump administration, here's the paradox, if the Trump administration, and on JBS we're acknowledging, here are all the things that he's done, that if you're a Jew and you care about Israel and you care about America, because to me, United States and America, in terms of global policy, they're in full alignment. Mm-hmm. They're two liberal democracies. Stability in the Middle East with a strong Israel is good for the United States. You want a strong Syria? You want a strong Iran? What is it that you don't understand if you look at the map? You want a liberal democracy that believes in the rule of law, that believes in freedom of thought, that believes in gender equality, that believes in marital equality, that doesn't believe in stoning, and doesn't believe in torching homosexuals and throw them off buildings. But on college campuses, it's so twisted that supporting the Palestinian cause is an intersectional issue that means that it joins up, oddly, with people that believe in LGBT rights. So this may have also given rise to the progressive movement of the Democratic Party, which is anti-Israel. Mm-hmm. And there's no way around that. They may say that, of course, we believe, but they really don't. They're, to a large extent, their sympathies lie with the Palestinians and the BDS movement. And this is something that would not have happened had Trump not been elected and had been so vigorous in the decisions that he made.
Okay. I'm not sure you're right, but it doesn't matter. When I say I'm not sure you're right, I'm not sure this wouldn't have happened no matter who, what Republican had been elected.
Really? So you're saying if what's his name, Kasich, a moderate Republican. I'm trying to think about even Pence, for God's sakes, who wasn't running for president.
If Pence had won, I don't think it would be any difference.
You think Elizabeth Warren would be
yes,
a player?
Yes, and the reason is this started before Trump. This has been a pendulum swing within the Democratic Party that you and I have witnessed, starting when there was a Jerusalem plank taken out of the Democratic platform. It was put back in, and Democrats booed on the floor of a Democrat National Convention.
Good call, Mark. I
Okay.
forgot that. That's
All
true.
right, now, we only have a minute or so left. And this is just exactly what I wanted for tonight.
I'm so sorry I
think.
took up all our time.
No, you did exactly what I wanted, okay? I want to know this, and you only have a minute. Where does a centrist Democrat who grew up with Kennedy and Humphrey and Jackson.
Let's not forget Scoop Jackson.
Where do we find now a place in the Democrat Party?
Yeah, we don't. That's what I'm worried about.
Isn't this terrible?
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the level of fractiousness and divisiveness that we're seeing, that for a triangulating centrist Democrat that on social and progressive issues is liberal, but has stronger views of foreign policy and American exceptionalism.
And certainly does not demonize Israel.
And certainly would not demonize Israel.
And understands.
And believes in global human rights.
And understands. And I don't know if you will agree with me. Those who support the current Palestinian regime are immoral.
Yes.
They're guilty of immorality.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being. By the way, this is what it's all about.
This is how we roll.
This is how we roll, and you know, it's a perfect in the news because it's about JBS, and I got to share it with Thane Rosenbaum, and he got to explain to you so much of his own view and his passion. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Mark.
And you're going to be on next week as we do a roundtable.
Yes,
so
I hear I'll be back. Thank you. Welcome, Spectrum audience. You'll enjoy yourself. Keep tuning in. Channel 219 in New York, right?
219 in New York and in LA. It's been a joy sitting with Thane. And again, I want to say how thrilled and happy all of us are to have now Spectrum part of the JBS family. And if Comcast would finally only join.
For the love of God.
Then JBS could serve the entire Jewish community as well as anyone who cares about Israel and who's interested in learning about Judaism and Jewish life, Jewish or not. So I hope Comcast follows Spectrum and Optimum and DirecTV and RCN and all the television providers who now carry JBS. And if you know someone who has Comcast, encourage them to tell Comcast it's time to add JBS. Anyway, again, thank all of you. I thank all of you for being part of the JBS family, and I hope all of you joining through Spectrum will enjoy all of JBS every single day. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.